Welcome and hello. This is a HEC HMS exercise, and I'm going to be describing GIS data and creating a basin map using like HMS. All right, what I have on the screen here is a website. It's a browser window to a URL, which is going to guide us through the different steps for this exercise. All right, so I'm going to leave a link to this website in the description to this video. So go ahead and check that out if you want to follow along. And if you don't, that's fine too. So here's the first page. It's really just an introduction to the project itself and an overview and what we're going to be doing. So you're welcome to read that. But the actual files and first steps doesn't actually start until the next page. So at the bottom of each page here for this tutorial, there's about 5 pages total. There's going to be a link that invites you to advance to the next page. So we're going to go ahead and click this link here. It says creating and linking terrain data into a basin model. And let's start scrolling down. It starts us off with these project files. So these are the initial project files. I'm going to start by downloading these files and then click download and then wait for that to happen. So these will be downloading to the default download destination that's for your browser. Okay, so those downloaded fine for me here. They're in this zip file folder here off to the left on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and open HEC HMS. I'm going to start by creating a project, and the instructions say to use the project name Puxatawny or something. I'm just going to call it project to keep it simple, but the labels themselves are not as important as the concepts and what we're doing here. Okay, so next I'm going to select the destination for my project. So I'm going to put it in HMS Exercise 1, and that's fine. And then make sure to use US customary units as well for this project, and then click Create. The project has been created. So what I'm going to do is with this zip data, I'm going to put the GIS data inside here into my projects maps directory. So I'm going to go projects and then maps, and it's empty now because I just created the project. And now here is the zip file. I'm going to navigate into GIS example and then GIS data. Here's all the data here. So I'm just going to go up one level and then copy, hold down control, drag it over into my maps directory within my project. Okay, so my GIS data is there. It's saved. It's ready to go and be accessed from my HMS project. All right, so let's go components and then create component basin model. Now I'm going to name this model Mahoney Creek and then create. So we have our basin here. And then next, what we want to do is assign terrain data. So down here in the components editor, we have terrain data. The default is none because we don't have any terrain data yet here in our Watershed Explorer. So I'm going to go components, terrain data manager, and then click new. And then I'm going to call this ned underscore 10m next, and then navigate to the file terrain feet albert, feet albers feet.tiff, and then select. And then for the units, it'll be feet and then finish. Okay, so the terrain data has loaded up right here, and now we just need to make that connection. So I'll select the Mahoning Creek Basin, and then down in the terrain data, select ned underscore 10m, which is our terrain data, and then click the save button. Then I'm going to click skip because the coordinates for this basin are saved in the terrain data itself, or at least it should be. We will double check that. So I'm going to go ahead and click skip and see what happens. And sure enough, this does look correct for a coordinate system. But we can check that by going up to the GIS menu and then clicking coordinate system. And sure enough, we do have a coordinate system that's already in place. So we're good there. I'm also going to go up to view map layers. And here we have all the layers in our map. Basin map here. Of course, terrain is currently our only map layer, but as we work through using some of these GIS tools and importing some shape files, we will see more map layers here, which we will toggle on and off over the course of this exercise. And let's do that now. I'm going to actually load up a few more map layers, which is what the instructions tell me to do on step 8. So I'm going to go ahead and click the add button here and navigate to your GIS data. It shows the shape files, and I'm going to load up rain gauges, flow gauge, and NHD river. So those are the last 3 here, basically all of them except the delineation points. So let's go ahead and add the bottom one first. We'll just work from the bottom up, and then NHD river. and then add the last one, which is the flow gauge. All right, so if I can't see, let me toggle off terrain so I can see what I'm working with here. And it may not be obvious because of the display and the colors and the line thickness, but let's just do these one at a time. So let's go with the flow gauge first. And I don't see anything except there's a very faint color here. What I'm going to do for flow gauge is just click flow gauge layer and then draw properties. I'm going to change this to be magenta and a circle. And we're going to make this big. Let's make this 18. So I'll click apply and then OK. And we can see our flow gauge. And there's only one flow gauge on the entire map. In fact, I can toggle on the terrain real quick just to make sure I'm zoomed out far enough, and I am. Okay, so let's go ahead and toggle that off. Next, let's go up to the rain gauge. And okay, so I'm seeing 3 dots here, but I can make them look a little bit better. So I'm going to click Draw Properties, and then we will select a circle again. I'm going to go with a color dark green, and then let's make those circles large, but not quite as large. How about size 10? Apply. So now we have 3 gauges here. This is for the rain gauge. So we have the flow gauge and the rain gauge down here at the downstream location are both on top of each other, but then there's 2 other rain gauges further upstream of the outlet. All right, the last layer here that I want to make sure I can see is the rivers. This is the river system in a shapefile. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit darker. So draw properties. I'm going to make this normal blue, like a royal blue. And then let's actually click apply and see what that looks like. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to see what it looks like a little bit heavier on the weight. Okay, I like that better. Let's go with that. Now, if you're working along with me and you scroll down to the bottom, we're at the bottom of the page. So go ahead and click the link to advance to the next page. And there is an option to download more files, but I'm going to continue working with the files I have here. All right, so the first step of the second page or the third page, however you're counting it, would be to perform some of the options from this GIS menu, starting with pre-process sinks. So as soon as you click that, it's going to pre-process sinks. The sink fill dataset is the hydrologically correct terrain dataset, and it's used for the delineation. So we go up to view and map layers. We now have a sink fill and sink locations layer that were added. The next step is to go up to GIS and then pre-process drainage. And as before, it's working. And it's going to add a couple layers as well. It's going to add a flow direction layer and a flow accumulation layer. So once those get loaded, we'll take a look at those. All right, so that got loaded there. Here's flow direction, and then here's flow accumulation. I'm going to toggle some of these other layers off. If we zoom in on the flow accumulation layer, this one's always the coolest. We can zoom in and see how the flow is accumulating based on the topography, where the blue lines represents the higher numbers and the larger upstream drainage area. The next step is to go up to GIS and then identify streams. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Then it asks me for the area to find the streams in square miles. The tutorial says to use 5 for 5 square miles. So I'm going to go ahead and use that and click OK. This will add a new record to our table here for identified streams. So if you go ahead and click that, this is my only layer. Here is the streams, and it is in a brown color. You may see some different colors. Again, you can change those by clicking the Draw Properties button here. I'm going to toggle on the terrain here just so we can see. Yep, okay, that looks correct. Next, I want to add the rain gauges and the rivers and then the terrain. Okay, what I'm going to do here is add a breakpoint next to the flow gauge location. So here is the flow gauge down here, the one that coincides with rain gauge. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in, and you notice that the identified streams layer is not exactly on the flow gauge location. That's all right, but I do have to put my breakpoint on the identified streams layer. So I'm going to go ahead and add my breakpoint. I'm going to call this outlet and create. This represents the outlet for the entire watershed. Next, I'm ready to delineate. So I'll go up to GIS and then delineate elements. At this point, I need to specify a subbasin name, prefix, a reach prefix, and a junction prefix. I'm just going to call it subbasin and then an underscore, reach, and then an underscore. Insert junctions. I'm going to say yes, junction underscore, and then convert breakpoints, I'm also going to say yes to that. I'm going to go ahead and click delineate, and it should take a moment. Again, this is the delineation for a 5 square mile stream threshold. So if you change the threshold on that stream area, then that would change the look and feel of how the delineation occurs. All right, so we have our delineation taking place, and we've got some new layers like discretization, subbasins, 2D connections, reaches, and icons. I'm going to turn off the terrain here so we can better see some of the subbasins. Also in the Watershed Explorer, we now have all of our subbasins, junctions, and reaches listed here and numbered. So there's quite a few. Looks like we have 17 subbasins and then a number of reaches and junctions as well. Go ahead and advance to the next screen if you're following along on the tutorial here. So I'm reading here that there were 8 reaches and 17 subbasins for the area upstream of that stream gauge that we identified as the breakpoint. Okay, I'm going to turn off the rivers layer. What the instructions tell us to do is that we only want to model 3 subbasins instead of the 17 here. So what we're going to do is merge some of these subbasins. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and select the subbasin and then select an adjacent subbasin by holding down the control key. I believe shift key works as well. And then we're going to go up to GIS and then merge elements. So you can only merge elements, like see that's been merged now. That looks good. We can only merge elements if they are hydrologically connected and if they're adjacent, like in the case of subbasins. And then reaches, if we're merging reaches, there's also some criteria there. If they need to be hydraulically connected and so on. All right, the 3 subbasins that we want to end it with is this one up here. This subbasin up here is going to be called Stump Creek. And then the next subbasin, I'm going to call it East Mahoney. And that includes this subbasin and this subbasin and this subbasin as well. And I think this one as well. But we can't merge them all at the same time, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and merge these two and see if that works. Yes, if the merge elements option is available here in the GIS menu, then it's always worked for me. Okay, that looks good. Let me go ahead and merge. I might have to zoom in here to make sure. Can I? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to merge these two subbasins now. And if you have trouble seeing the coloring, the user's manual mentions, or sorry, the tutorial mentions that you can go to Tools Program Settings and then Basin Map and change your highlight color to something that might be easier to see, like magenta. So if I click OK there, now the highlighted subbasins appear as magenta. Okay, so let's go GIS, merge elements. Okay, so that merged. After the merge action, it does zoom me out to the extent of the map layer. So just keep that in mind. And then I think there's one more I want to merge, and it's this subbasin here. So let's go ahead and merge that one. This is our Stump Creek subbasin. This is our East Mahoney Basin. And then all the subbasins that remain downstream of these two is going to be its own subbasin called, I'll just call it Local Mahoney Subbasin. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge all these. Okay, we have now merged all of our subbasins. We are now down to subbasin 1 and then 2 and then 3. And everything else here in the Watershed Explorer is either a junction or a reach. And we also want to combine the reaches. We want to merge the reaches. There are, I believe, 4 reaches. So there's number 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. So I just highlighted them all individually. I'm going to hold down the control key and then highlight them all together. And then I believe I can just go GIS and merge elements. So we did that. And if you noticed, our Watershed Explorer collapsed. So now we have 1 reach right here, and then we have 3 subbasins, and then 1 junction and 1 sink. So this is beautiful. We got things cleaned up according to what the instructions told us to do. Next, we're going to add 2 fictional flow gauges to the Stump Creek subbasin. So let's go ahead and get, here's our layers map. I'm going to go ahead and click add down here and then select this delineation points.shapefile. And what it did is it introduced 2 points in yellow up here in the Stump Creek subbasin. So I'm going to go ahead and make those a different color. Let's make those purple, just like the other stream gauge was, or magenta, or close enough. and then make it nice and big. Okay. And then apply, and then okay. All right, so delineation points.shp are now on the map. What we want to do now is I'm going to call this one point 1 and point 2. That's what it says in the tutorial. What we want to do is split this subbasin, this Stump Creek subbasin, into three separate parts. There's going to be between point 1 and the outlet, the junction down here, junction 4, that will be one subbasin. Then we're going to have another subbasin between points 1 and 2, and then a third subbasin upstream of point 2, just to kind of demonstrate how that works. All right, so I'm going to start by, first of all, selecting the subbasin, and then go up to GIS and split element. Okay, so what I want to do here is also turn on the layer for identified streams. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. The identified streams layer is on, but it's just very faint. So I'm going to change the properties there. Identified streams, draw properties. Okay, it took a while, but I got it figured out. This is what I'm using to display the identified streams layer. It's right here. It's just a solid navy blue color using the classify symbology. Okay, so I'm going to close that. Now what I want to do again is zoom in, and I need to view my point 1 and point 2 again. Okay, here they are. The delineation points are now labeled. And thankfully, the identified stream runs right through point 1, so that'll make that easy. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the subbasin to select it. And then I'm going to go up to GIS, split element. Okay, I needed to zoom out and zoom back in. Here is my point 1 and the identified stream. So I'm just going to make sure, zoom in far enough so I'm extra sure that I'm going to put this cursor on the identified streams layer. So I'm going to go ahead and click accept, and cool. So we are good now. We have now created a subbasin within that Stump Creek basin. That's the first one. Now we need to basically create a subbasin between point 1 and 2, and then point 2 and upstream from there. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the point 2 area, and you notice that point 2, this stream gauge, is not on the identified streams layer. That's okay. I'm going to toggle on the flow accumulation layer now, so we can still see approximately where that identified streams layer is and point 2. I'm going to go ahead and select this subbasin, and then go split GIS split element. And then I want to zoom in and click on the flow accumulation layer. I want to click on a cell that has a huge number. Like this one here is 97,000, but then this one is 60, and this one is 4. So I want to make sure that I'm on a cell with a huge number, and that way it'll work out better for me. So go ahead and click that. Okay, what I needed to do instead is create a breakpoint. My bad, but it's all good. So click the breakpoint tool, and then go ahead and click a breakpoint right there. We'll just call this point 2, breakpoint. Okay, and create. Now I'm going to do what I did before, split element, and then click on that breakpoint. And then it's asking me, do I wish to accept the changes? And I can kind of preview the changes by pulling this dialog box out of the way. And that's exactly what I was expecting to see. That's what the tutorial looks like. So I'll go ahead and click accept. All right. So let me toggle off that flow accumulation layer. That's always kind of busy. And what we have here is our Stump Creek subbasin is now got 3 separate parts to it. This is the area that's downstream of point 1 hydrologically. And then this is the area that's between points 1 and 2 hydrologically. And then this area right here is the area that's upstream of point 2 hydrologically. Adding delineation points 1 and 2 was just an exercise to demonstrate how to force sub-basin outlets to be located at gauge sites or any other point of interest. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those changes. That's what it says to do in the tutorial. So just give me a moment. All right, so that's done. In the process of merging those elements, I'm back down to 3 subbasins and 1 reach. That concludes the penultimate page of instructions on the tutorial. So go ahead and click the link at the bottom of the page. And the last page just talks about a few cleanup tasks, such as actually renaming these subbasins what they should be. So up here, subbasin 5, I'm going to go ahead and rename that and call it Stump Creek. Okay. This subbasin over here is subbasin 2. Let's give that a name. I'm going to call that East Mahoney. And then this subbasin here is subbasin 3, which will be named Local Mahoney. I could also rename the sink and the reach, but I'm not gonna. I can also make sure that the network is hydrologically connected. So for instance, if I select my Stump Creek subbasin here, and then over in the components editor, the downstream, it's connected to junction 4. And that's correct because this is junction 4 right here. Oops. So I selected East Mahoney. That connects to junction 4 as well. If I select the local Mahoney, it's connected to sink 1. That's the downstream connection. And then the junction 4 is connected to reach 1, and the reach 1 is connected downstream to the sink. So that looks good. We can also confirm that this is hydrologically ordered by right-clicking on the basin, Mahoney Creek, and then clicking this resort elements hydrologically. Okay, so that was already hydrologically ordered, but we can right-click and confirm that that's the case there. The last thing we can do is confirm that these areas are correct by going up to parameters and then sub-basin area. So we have the sub-basin areas listed in this table, and the default sorting is Watershed Explore, but we can change it to alphabetical if you want. All right, so these are the different areas for the 3 different watersheds, and we can add them up and then compare them with published data if we have something at our disposal, just to confirm that what we have in our model matches reality. All right, well, that was it for this exercise in GIS and using some GIS tools to create and work with a terrain and delineate watersheds and perform a few other functions with regard to this basin map.